Alrighty, folks, grab a seat, make yourselves comfortable. Most of you already know I'm Serge Arutunjan. I'm the current controller at the NACC for going on 2.5 years. And today's presentation is going to be on the art of money management, what I hope to be a common sense approach. And if I can get that point across to everybody tonight, it will be successful. There are three, I believe, the three most common things that really couples argue about: money, kids, and infidelity. I'm here to address 2 of the 3.
Why not the third?
That's beyond my field of expertise. And thankfully, I haven't had to deal with that. You figure out which ones when we're done. Today's lesson, I guess the theme of it is, manage your money, don't let it manage you. All of this is on the printout there, Norma, in front of you, if you want to follow along.
Does she want to come up closer?
You want to sit up here? You want to sit up closer? You can.
No, I'll stay. That's all right. I can hear you, but that
Okay. Boy, I've never had anybody tell me that in my entire life, to speak up, Serge. That is awesome. All right, I will try to project a little bit louder. Again, the lesson that I'm hoping you come away with is manage your money, don't let it manage you. I'll start this off, and I'm just going to let everybody know, whatever you have learned and been taught by anybody else previously from a money management perspective, forget it. They didn't know what the heck they were talking about. Forget it all. What you're going to learn here tonight, what I'm going to teach you, is all you ever need to know. Don't listen to anybody else. I'm telling you. And if anybody ever approaches you with that line, you turn around and run away as fast as you can. Because there is nobody who is an expert at all this stuff. Because if they were, they'd be on a $50 million yacht floating the Mediterranean. This is something that is difficult to grasp, many moving parts. It takes a lifetime of expertise, and you need to really count on much advice, different perspectives. You'll hear me say this numerous times today: one size does not fit all. There is not one answer that works for everybody. What I have done works for me and my family, with a little resistance, but it still works. But it may not work for you. And if you can just remember that, it's going to make it a heck of a lot easier. I've got 6 sections to today's presentation, starting off with family finances, second, investing, third, taxes. Unfortunately, that's always got to be a part of it. Fourth, personal insurance. Fifth, legal documents, which is also very critical. And sixth and final, your financial legacy, and the most uncomfortable topic of all to talk about, end of life matters, because that also is a key component to complete the cycle. We'll start off with family finances. I'm going to read little excerpts from this, but most of it will be more interactive. We've all heard about the dreaded F word, right? We all know what that means. Well, unfortunately, too many feel budgeting is the dreaded B word. It is not people's favorite topic. It is run away as fast as you can from it often, and it shouldn't be. Effective budgeting is an essential component, I feel, to every family's overall financial plan. Your budgeting plan should be realistic. It should always maintain at least a small amount of flexibility, because life throws stuff at us that changes all the time, and it's never as you originally had, as you originally planned it to be. It's got to be simple and easy to maintain, because if it's not, you'll drop it like a hot potato. I get it. I probably would too, if I wasn't the numbers guru that I am, or that I think I am, right? One of the components, sorry?
Can we put that on your shirt?
I already have one. It's important as you go through the budgeting process to take a step back every month or every couple months, compare your actual results to what you thought was going to happen, that you budgeted for. Adjust the budget as it needs to be adjusted. Sometimes the variances are just timing and no adjustments really needed. Stay the course. Sometimes, you know what? Your assumptions may have been incorrect and you need to course correct when that happens. So the only way to really ever be able to determine that is to continually review it on an ongoing basis. The other component for families, involve your kids in your older kids in the process. They don't need to know the numbers of what you pay for your mortgage or how much your car loan is, but the process and the various items contained in your budget. Let them begin to understand that there is a mortgage payment that is critical, that a car loan payment has to happen. Oh, and by the way, you got to have insurance for the car. Now, they may know a lot or some of that anyway, but talk to them about it, reinforce it with them, and it becomes more ingrained, and they will be far more knowledgeable about those things and probably more receptive to incorporating some sort of financial discipline as they become adults. That's, I think, the best approach to take. Again, there are numerous budget formats that are effective. I've used one for 40 years. I haven't changed it. I was fortunate enough that when I set it up, it worked for me and my family and still does. There are tons of different ways to do this. Find one that you're comfortable with. I'm a grains of sand kind of thinker. I get down to the nitty-gritty because it's what I do. Others don't. You don't need to be. Just do it at a level that makes sense to you, that you feel you are going to have the time and effort to maintain it and stick with it. A basic budget needs to have income and expenses. Now there's a revelation, right? Tell me, was that just riveting or what? Income, you break down the income sources. Your primary, and when you're talking about your income from your employment, it's your take-home pay, not your gross. It's what cash you have to spend. Primary job, secondary jobs, if you reach my age and beyond, Social Security, alimony that you might be receiving, anything that you are taking out of your retirement portfolios. And add whatever categories are relevant to your life. That's something that is so critical to include all of those income sources and project them as you know them to be. You get paid bi-weekly. Every 2 weeks, there should be a number in there for your expected net pay. You get Social Security, it comes the same time every month. Put it in there. You receive alimony or child support, it should come, God willing, the same time every month and add that to your budget as well. Expenses, a little more complicated. In my way of thinking, and it's something that my wife and I have experienced after I retired from my primary career, we sat down and we made the distinction between needs and wants. Needs and wants. Huge difference. And it's amazing. Once I'm sitting here trying to convince my wife that we can retire comfortably with me not working a full-time career, we were able to find a lot of things that we used to think were needs. They really weren't. They were wants. And we started to get rid of those that our new income situation could support comfortably. So make that distinction. It's important to do so. Needs, obviously, rent, mortgage, whatever, property taxes, the electric bill, car insurance, repairs and maintenance, groceries, that might be important, right? And, cell phone, all the things that you need to have to really live nowadays. Then you get down into the wants category. That's debatable, and wants for one person are so different than the other. It is setting money aside for entertainment, eating out, getting their hair and nails done on a regular basis. I just happen to look over that way arbitrarily, believe me. Gym memberships, stuff like that. They're not life essentials. Those are choices you've made to allocate some of your income to fund those. They're important to you. I get it. I have my set of needs that others may just totally disagree with, and some may have needs that I would never think or wants that I would never include in my budget. But make that distinction. It's important later on, and hopefully I'll illustrate why it's so important to make that distinction.
Can you tell me why pizza is not a good food group?
No, that's for another session altogether, because I share that belief. It is a good food group. although we usually look at budgeting in a monthly time frame because so many of our expenses are on a monthly cycle. The rent, the mortgage, your electric bill, yada, 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 whatever. But I recommend to break your budget down into weekly increments. Now again, that's my approach. It doesn't need to be yours because it better, more accurately matches the timing of your income with all of your bills that are due at different times of the month. And if you're working with a shoestring budget with not a lot of wiggle room, you need to make sure that on the 17th of every month, you got X number of dollars in there to meet the bill that's due at that time period. So I'm comfortable dealing with it in weekly increments so that you can be assured that you have money to cover those bills when they are due. That's important to not lose sight of. The surplus or deficit that occurs when you do a budget, you do income, you do expenses, and then the net for that particular week is either plus or minus. Sometimes it's just timing, like I said before, and it's going to self-correct. Other times, you know what, I estimated $200 this month for the electric bill and it came in at $250. I may have to change that estimate, or who knows, what is an unusually cold month or whatever. You never know, there's always reasons. But look at those to determine if you need to do a correction or not. When there is a surplus or a deficit, later on we'll discuss how I recommend that surplus to be allocated to help keep everything on track. I have in the handouts, I'm not going to go over it now, but I have a handout that will illustrate a sample 4-week budget with income categories and expense categories to illustrate what I just explained. And I think it's laid out pretty simply. So you want to set up a system so that your bills are paid on time. So many of us now, through technology, have auto pay features that we take advantage of. It's convenient. It certainly is effective. 2 words of warning when you do that from my perspective anyway. When you set up auto pays, if you can, set them up at your bank paying the vendor instead of using the vendor site. Because if you cease using that particular vendor for their service or product, sometimes it's a hassle to turn it off, and you may end up paying for an extra month worth of something that you tried to cancel or not. If you control it at your bank, your account, you can shut it off instantly to not make any unnecessary additional payments that you don't want to have made. So I think that's very useful to think of it in those terms. The other cautionary tale using auto pay features is it's relevant to many of us that live on a shoestring budget when there isn't an extra 3, 4, 5, 10, whatever numbers of dollars sitting in your checking account. Because the timing of it is so critical, those auto pays are going to happen unless you cancel them or change the date. And sometimes if they happen and you don't have the money in there, you're going to be overdrawn and have to pay fees and all the whole nights, or things are going to bounce, and it is embarrassing at the very least.
It's expensive.
And expensive, and could be detrimental to your credit score long term. So if you use the auto pay feature, make sure the timing of when those payments are going to hit, you have enough cash in your account to cover those, or adjust the date, and so that you are not faced with that situation. If you're doing this and at the end of a month, I'm using monthly increments because that's logical to me, you have a surplus. If you have not yet built up what I call an emergency cash fund, which we're going to get into next, apply a portion of that surplus to that emergency cash fund. The rainy day fund. People call it different things. It's critical because life throws stuff at you that you just never expect, and it's important to have money set aside for that instantly if you need to have it instantly. If you already have an emergency cash fund set aside, take the surplus and pay extra on the smallest debt that you have outstanding, and we'll discuss why it's important to do that in a little while as well. So let's say you have a credit card balance of $5,000, a car loan at $10,000, and another loan at $20,000. Forget the interest rates, different approach. Others don't follow this, I do. Pay extra on the smallest balance, because the faster you get rid of that smallest balance, you'll have more money to pay off the next smallest balance, and so forth and so on. Just one approach. Isn't for everybody, but it does work for some. So keep that in mind. And again, as I said before, always look at your results, your budget to actual, adjust it. Adjust future budgets if you have to, in case you were really, oh man, I forgot about that XYZ bill, that comes up. I better add that in there, and then make the adjustment necessary. I mentioned we were going to talk about an emergency cash fund. This is one of my favorite topics, and it is so underappreciated and ignored, because it's easy to ignore something that you don't need right away. But you hope you'll never need. That's the other part of it. I'm going to read this verbatim because this is so critical. Many financial planners recommend, and I agree, establishing an emergency cash fund is an essential part of any financial plan. What this means is that you have money set aside that you can access quickly if you have to cover an unexpected expenditure, like a car repair, a new furnace, an unexpected out-of-pocket medical expense, or some other major life event, which we all know gets thrown our way from time to time. Also, and this is a big also, with so much economic uncertainty, losing your job nowadays, along with the impact of what COVID-19 did to so many businesses, is unfortunately more and more a reality to many people. You need to be able to handle that, and having an emergency cash fund hopefully will make enduring that torture and that stress of being out of work for a period of time much easier to deal with. It's an emergency cash fund for a reason. That, as we all know, is a classic emergency. I recommend, as does the people I have learned from, it's a little lofty, but if you can get your emergency cash fund to be about 6 months worth of your needs expenses, not the wants expenses, your needs expenses to cover your mortgage, your electric bill, your car insurance, all the things that you have to continue to pay for in a period of time. That's a lot. I get it. And the key to remember, this isn't built all at once. You are going to build it incrementally. And it may take a year. It may take 2 years. But don't lose sight of its importance. It is as important as any budgeted line item in your budget as any of the others. Set money aside if you can, because God forbid there's going to be a day where you're going to need some. So that's why it is as important as it is. And why you want to do it that way is when you're faced with that, and we've all done it, and we probably all will do it at times again moving forward, you don't want to dig your debt hole any deeper when you're faced with that, because all that does is make the hill that much higher to climb to get out. Sometimes it's unavoidable. I get it. I've been there. I've done it. We all will. But with a fully established emergency cash fund, it reduces the likelihood of having to depend on that. So if you can...
What do you consider the greatest way to save the money?
As you get a surplus each week or month when you finish your budget for the month, set surplus aside. If you are budgeting correctly and your income just in a savings account, the key to it is it's got to be immediately available. So don't invest it in the stock market, because then you're subject to the timing, and if you need it and the market's down at the time you need it, you're going to take a hit. So put it someplace that is quickly, readily accessible, not a mattress. So, well, that might work then. as long as it's not a waterbed, because that wouldn't work. So again, I recommend 6 months. It doesn't need to be. Start off maybe 3 months, build your way up to it. Whatever it is, just don't lose sight of its importance is really what I'm trying to get across here. It will help you not to have to go into deeper and deeper debt. Most financial planners, including myself, try to stress to become debt-free. That's a loaded statement because maintaining some debt is important for other reasons, because it impacts your credit score. There is also tax advantages to maintaining a mortgage balance, though recent tax law changes have made the standard deductions so high that more and more people don't have enough itemized deductions to take advantage of mortgage interest any longer. So that is rendered that irrelevant, but many, higher income people and with mortgages of much greater value where the interest is outrageously high can still take advantage of it. So I'm not suggesting you get rid of all that debt, but certainly the credit card debt. Just get rid of it if you can. And then car loans, you get no benefit from carrying that debt. You have a mortgage, and even maintaining credit card debt. If you have the financial discipline, and hopefully as you get through this process, that discipline will become more developed, it's okay to charge stuff. Pay it off. That month, pay it off entirely. Credit agencies love that because it shows you've got credit and you've got the track record of paying it off in a timely fashion. So your credit score will be positively impacted over time by those good payment habits. But the problem is when life gets in the way again and you've got a $2,000 credit card balance and they send you a statement and the minimum payment is $40 and it's a month before Christmas, guess what? I know. Everybody's going to be faced with that. So that's the hazard and the downside. If you've got the discipline to do it, man, it makes sense to just pay it off. And some of them give you miles and points and hotel stays and Lord knows 10,000 other things to entice you to use their card. Those are all good things, as long as you pay the balance off and don't incur the interest expense and then the bad impact on your credit score. Alrighty, now we get into probably the most complicated and difficult part, and that's when we're dealing with children, allowances, and teaching them the value of money. We all know how easy that is, right? There's no reason for me to talk about any of this. It's a hot knife through butter, right? Of course.
It doesn't always work.
Yeah, it seldom works. I think the first step is to sit down with your child, maybe as young as 7 or 8. It depends on the child, obviously, and the home situation. That may not be the right age for your personal situation. And work with them to create a list of tasks that you would want them to be responsible for. Setting the table for dinner, taking out the trash, walking the dog, simple things that are going to be of benefit to you as a parent, because it's something you don't have to do any longer, and it gives them an opportunity to earn their allowance by doing stuff. The other thing that I subscribe to, some don't, again, maybe because I'm a granular thinker, break it down task by task. Each task has its individual monetary value. So, for instance, 3 tasks per week, in a simple example, set the table for dinner every night. If you do that for the week, that's $2. Take out the garbage once a week, whatever trash day is, that's $1. Walk the dog every day, that's worth $2. So in this example, Junior can make $5 a week as an allowance if all those tasks are completed. If they're not, number one, I always recommend give the child an opportunity to do it right. If it wasn't done to your level of expectation, don't immediately, quote unquote, punish them by not giving them a portion of their allowance. Bring it to their attention, allow them to correct it. More often than not, if there's money on the line, they may, you never know. If they don't, then that $5 becomes something less than $5. And it's easier to do that if you set individual values task by task by task. Display a chart on the fridge or some prominent area. Let them check it off. We all know how much satisfaction we get when we make lists to do at work and you get the thrill of checking something off. Honest to God, it works, does it not? It works for me. I bet you it works for most everybody. It is a feeling of accomplishment. Finally got that off.
Depends on what age your kids are.
Well, absolutely, but begin to teach them, you do it, show that you did it. And when the child accomplishes it, celebrate it. It is a reward. Here's your reward. We're going to make a big deal out of it, do something special for them, whatever it is that works in your family environment, but reward good behavior. Yes, bad behavior gets punished or there's some sort of downside to it, but good behavior needs to be rewarded. That's what we want to have repeated. So reward it. We all are motivated by being rewarded. It's a paycheck, attaboy, a nice hug and a kiss from my beautiful wife. Whatever that reward system is, we all are motivated by that. And children are no different. Absolutely no different. So keep that in mind once you're doing that. Now, the threshold of what the allowance level is going to depend on the family budget. So sit down after you discover or after you decide on the list with your child that we're going to want you to do A, B, and C. You don't discuss the money aspect of it with them. You sit down with your spouse, your significant other, whatever the case may be, and figure out what can my budget afford to pay Junior a weekly allowance. And everyone's situation is going to be different. Is it $5? Is it 10? Is it 1? Is it 20? Whatever, who knows? You know, make it meaningful, make it something that is logical to your family's overall family budget so that it doesn't become onerous. You know, this has got to be something that fits comfortably into your budget, and it is not going to be, oh man, I gotta pay Junior, I don't have enough. Then you got to readjust it. You got to make it so that it's part of the process and not like, oh God, here we go again type of thing. I like weekly calendars for the kids because a lot of the tasks, you know, you want the reward to not be a month after something's done. It's too much time. The impact of it's minimized when that happens. If it's a week, it's short term, it's immediate, and we are all an immediate gratification society now anyway. We all crave immediate gratification. Your children are going to be no different. So if you can tie the reward in a timely manner to what they do, I think that has the greatest impact. As things move along, let's fast forward a couple months. The kid's making his $5 every week or whatever. He's saving up in his mind for something. And he says, Mom, Dad, is there something I can do to earn more money? Encourage it. If your budget can afford it, encourage it. And give them 1 or 2 more tasks. That's the behavior you want to encourage if you can. Yes, if you want to work more, if you want to work harder, yes, 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 1,000 times yes, and we will compensate you for it. And they know that. That's why they're asking. They ain't asking because they want to do more. They want more of an allowance, which is cool. That's okay. That's not a problem. If you can afford to give them more for more tasks, then consider it. I think it's a worthwhile thing to consider.
While still emphasizing the value of volunteering and good deeds.
You're no reading ahead. I didn't know I had a peanut gallery, but apparently I do. Okay. Thank you, dear. I love you, by the way. Thank you. Yeah, you know what? This is my NACC family, by the way. We should all get together sometime. Wow. So similar to what we talked about earlier about differentiating between needs and wants, the same principle should apply for your children.
Definitely.
I believe, again, no problem. I feel that every day, Norma, don't worry. I think distinguishing between needs and wants for a child is equally as important. I think, if again, the family budget allows for it, the family budget, the parents' money, should provide the needs. School, clothing for school, new books, sneakers, the need stuff. Let the child save his allowance for the wants stuff. That even if you think it's the stupidest way to spend money, what a waste. Why are you spending money on whatever? So what? As long as you monitor if it's not dangerous or inappropriate for the child, it's his money, her money. Let him spend it. There's no harm in that. Over time, if it really did end up becoming a waste of money and foolishly spent, you know what? At some point, they'll come to that realization and say, the heck did I spend 22 bucks on whatever? Yeah, whatever. Man, if I didn't, I would have had more money to buy this other thing that I really, really want that now I don't have $22 to spend on. So again, it's that type of learning experience that eventually, in most children, the light goes on. It does. They're never going to give you the satisfaction of letting you know the light goes on, but it does. It really, really does. So let them spend their money within reasonable parameters how they wish. The other aspect of that, which I think is critical, when they're younger, you're going to probably be with them when they go to a store to buy whatever it is they're buying, or online with them, helping them buy something virtually. If it's in person, let them do the transaction. With your oversight, let them experience the feeling of reaching into a wallet or a purse or whatever and taking out their hard-earned money and giving it to someone else. Believe it or not, that's an experience that leaves an impact. It really, really does. I'm now giving away something that I worked hard to get. Yeah, I'm getting something in return, but this feeling is different. I'm not, so it makes an impact, Let them do the financial transaction, receive the change, understand the value, the price of what they just bought. Familiarizing themselves with that whole transaction end of it is part of this. Let them get comfortable with that. And as they get older, they're going to do it on their own. They're not going to watch you around anyway. But by then, they will have learned, hopefully, the value of money and be better schooled at making better decisions in buying. Who am I kidding? They're going to be teenagers. No, they're not. But regardless, it's something that, you set the wheels in motion and see what happens. Trust your kid. If you teach your children, a lot of times they will pleasantly surprise you. They're listening. They're just never going to let you know they're listening. Again, I think even when it comes to the parents and the family buying the needs stuff, such as the clothing and school supplies and all that stuff that I said, you're going to be with them when you're buying them school clothes or sneakers because it's got to fit and the right style and all that stuff. It's your money. The parents now speaking. Give it to them to do the transaction. Let them see that pair of jeans that they want that is whatever, 80 bucks versus the one that's over there for 50, which most parents would say that's good enough. You want the one for 80? It's within my, I'll buy that for you. Here's $80, let him or her do the transaction. Again, involve them in the transaction. It leaves a bigger imprint, a bigger impression on people when they're participating in the process. And you don't need to go into the nitty-gritty of your family budget, but involve them in that transaction end of it. I think that's worthwhile. When you're at a store, oftentimes, you may need to pay for whatever you're getting for them with credit. The whole concept of credit cards is oftentimes so misunderstood by teenagers and young adults. Wow, I don't got to have cash for this? Explain that you have to pay for it when the bill comes due. So let them understand. I guess the bottom line is involve them in the thought process so they are learning and being exposed to it so they can be better at it when they become adults. It's important to also sit down with them from time to time, explain. You make choices. Little Johnny, little Jenny, whatever, I can't give you all that I want to give you. I can't afford that designer pair of XYZ or the brand name whatever. we only have this much. Explain that life is choices. Sometimes you have to pick one, not both, because you can't. There's no shame in that, and it is, excuse me one second, and it is something that, without getting into the specifics of your budget, because you do not want to share the numbers of your budget with your children, because it'll be on the internet the next day. So keep that part of it separate. Teenagers talk, and it'll be out there for everybody to see. But the concept, the whole thing is just involving them to the extent they can be so they can appreciate the process. And again, eventually, they may even appreciate being brought into those conversations later on in life. Maybe that's a pipe dream, but oftentimes maybe it is.
With my kids, I showed them my paychecks and I laid out the bills. I said, okay, you add these up and deduct it from what this is.
Yeah.
And if there's anything left over, we can buy whatever you want.
That's very effective. That's
And you know what?
certainly
My
a
kids,
technique.
To this day, know how to budget.
That's a great way to do it.
They don't do it, but
They know how to. Yeah, theoretically they know how to do it, right? So
Take some left over.
in that section, really, the conclusion is simple.
I do the same thing.
Have your child participate in the whole allowance, saving, and buying process. It'll teach them lessons about money management that hopefully will last them a lifetime. Kids are sponges. They absorb everything that's around them.
they're about 14.
No, they still are. They just don't give you credit for it. They're listening. More gets through than any parent ever realizes. It really does. I can speak personally because I never gave my parents any notification that I was really listening. And as I turned into an adult, it was like, wow, I must have been. I wouldn't have known that otherwise. You do. It's just unavoidable. Okay, so moving on. Managing debt. Big topic. There are numerous effective ways to manage debt. Many well-known, respected people that have their own theories on it. I personally subscribe to a gentleman by the name of Dave Ramsey. I like his theory about managing debt. It's different, and again, it's not for everybody, but I'll very quickly go through the concept. Take your debts, credit card, car loan, personal loan, mortgage even. That, like I said, sometimes that's the exception, but include that as well. List them, smallest amount owed to largest amount owed. Forget about the interest rates, forget about anything else right now, just list them from smallest to largest. As you go through your budget from month to month, as I said before, if you have a surplus and you already have your emergency cash fund set up, start applying what cash you can to that smallest balance. Do the same thing the following month. Do the same thing the following month before that smallest debt balance is gone. Then all of a sudden, that entire, $300 a month payment or $200 a month payment disappears. And guess what? You got $200 additional dollars to now apply to this second smallest debt balance. And then you work through that. And then so on and so forth beyond that. And before you know it, you are far more debt-free than you ever thought you would ever be able to be, but there's a key. Don't dig the debt hole deeper while you're doing it. If you have to charge in the meantime, pay it off. If that means you're not able to pay down the debts as fast as you otherwise would like to, it's still better to pay off new debt immediately so it doesn't keep piling on. And certainly, always make the minimum payment. So in my example, so the second and third smallest amounts, pay the minimums because you don't want to be late. So you're not going to be punished from a credit score standpoint. You're going to pay off what minimally needs to be paid off, but you're going to apply as much as you can to the smallest one. Again, it's not for everybody. It's at some levels maybe even counterintuitive because my instinct before I read his stuff was I'm going to pay off the higher interest rate ones first. Makes sense. There's nothing wrong with that theory, and it's right. This is just a different approach. That's all. This works. I know it does. I've done it. Doesn't mean it works for everybody. That's one of the things I probably should have couched this at the beginning. Everything I'm sharing with you, I would never share with anybody if I didn't know it worked because it's worked for me. Doesn't mean it works for you, but it does work for me. So keep that in mind. smallest to largest, but it does take discipline. Man, does it take discipline. So if you've got the discipline, stick with it through tough times, through better times. If you need to table it for a while because life throws you a curveball, man, doesn't that happen enough? Table it for a while. Get back to it as soon as you can. It's important to stick with it. In the case of all budgeting and debt reduction strategies, you're making choices. I like to use this example. It really distinguishes between needs and wants. I see the line at Starbucks every morning, 275,000 cars long. Okay? That's a pretty busy Starbucks, right? That's got to be expensive. I don't know. I've never been to Starbucks. I'm not a coffee drinker, and I wouldn't pay premium price for it even if I was. Others do. Cool. That's important to you? That's your choice. Who am I to judge? But in the final analysis, that's a want. That's not a need. It may be an important want, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be. But if you start looking at those types of expenditures and say, I'm spending whatever, $100 a month on a double mocha colada, whatever the hell they're called from Starbucks. Can you tell I've been there before? Not really. Then, really, you know what? I could probably spend that money more wisely if I wanted to. But until you ask yourself that question, you're not going to change the habit or the pattern that you've developed. And again, I'm not judging. If that's what you want to do, go for it, man. I probably spend money on things that you'd be scratching your head at too, But did I really need a new driver 2 years ago when I golf? I thought I did. so I bought one. Did I have to? Yeah, my golf game said I had to, but that's a story for another day. And don't get discouraged. Life's going to throw you shit that you're not going to be able to, excuse me, audience, stuff that you're not going to be able to handle. G-rated, right? Okay. I knew that was going to happen at least once. I knew it. So the basic concept is just stick with it. If you get off track, take a step back, reassess, and jump back on as quickly as you can. I'm going to read you a very short quote from Dave Ramsey, and he's got, 30 or 40 books on this, audio and, a hard copy. He's just one of many. He's easy to follow, he's easy to read, but there's many others out there. Dave he's got a pretty cool tagline for this strategy, and it's simple. It allows you to get to the fun stuff faster. If you get out of debt, all of a sudden that $1,200 a month in aggregate payments you're making for car loans and credit cards or whatever, you have now $1,200 a month to spend on fun stuff. So,
We don't do fun.
well, I hope you can at some point. So, again, I think in conclusion, and this is my theme all the way through, I know this works, but it may not be for you. One size does not fit all. Try something else. Try something else.
Can you explain something to me? How is it that, I've read, that if you make a double payment in January for your mortgage every month, or every year, that it cuts your mortgage in half? I don't understand.
It cuts out the number of periods that, what a lot of mortgage companies will do, they will allow you to make what's called bi-monthly payments. So you're making a payment every 2 weeks. So at the end of every year, you're basically making 26 payments instead of 12, but the amounts it's proportionate, but you end up paying principal down faster. That's the key. The more money you pay sooner on principal, yeah, of course, absolutely, right. Now again, if it fits into your budget, great. But if it doesn't, and move the money elsewhere, if it's going to do more good for you someplace else. On a mortgage, I always recommend pay the minimum that's required. Take a look at the entire financial situation, and if you still have money, pay ahead on it. That's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But more often than not, there's other things that money could be put to better use, like establishing an emergency cash fund, or paying down your credit card all the way, or whatever the case may be. But it's not a bad idea to do that if you have cash to do it. Oftentimes I believe there's better uses of your cash than to do that.
The savings thing is easy.
Lorraine, others will tell you differently. Again, it doesn't work for everybody, but that's just my personal opinion on that.
I just don't understand how the whole, how you cut your
It's
in half.
it's loans are amortized, and it's heavy on interest for the first, a 30-year mortgage, you're basically touching principal for the first 5 years, you know, and then as time goes on, it's more principal, less interest, more principal, less interest, but that's just the way those are structured. And all loans are basically, all interest-bearing loans are basically figured out the same way. You're paying nothing but interest the first couple of years of a 30-year mortgage. You know, it is what it is. You know, those are the rules, so we got to play by them. Okay, investing. Whew, you may think investing in stocks and bonds is not for everybody, but in my opinion, it should be. There's volatility from month to month, from year to year, recently from hour to hour, for Christ's sakes. But I bet you, I'm going to tell you a fact now that I bet you didn't know. The Dow Jones Industrial Average has averaged just over 7% return for every 10 consecutive year period since the 1920s when it was established. So for every 10-year period, that average return at the Dow is just over 7%. Stop and think about that. That's through the Great Depression, it's through World War II, it's through 2 major recessions, it's through the tech bubble that we had in the mid to late 90s, and even through the latest COVID-19 pandemic stock market fiasco. Every 10-year period, it's averaged just over 7% at a minimum.
What do you mean by 7% return? Is that
If you invest $1,000, in 1 year, that's $1,000 will earn you $70. So that's a 7% return on that $1,000.
And comparatively, if you only put your money in your bank, it would give you
You
approximately
$2.10 with current interest rates, probably.
That's where the-
So, but again, the flip side to that, Lorraine, is there's risk. It's volatility. So yes, it's averaged over 7% in these 10-year windows, but in the middle of one of those, if you needed to pull money out to meet a life circumstance, and the market happens to be in a downturn, guess what? You're taking a loss. So again, there's risk, but there certainly is potential reward.
okay? So how do you figure out what you should invest in?
I'm not here to tell you how to do it. I'm telling you the basic tenets of it, and then you should talk to a financial advisor because I'm not one. I wish I was. I sometimes think I am, but I'm really not. That's really calls for a skilled professional that knows the ins and outs of it and the rules and regulations that constantly change, and that's why it's important to seek a professional in that. The other thing to consider, and this is another phenomenon that many people don't appreciate, the power of compound earnings and time. Those two things are our friend when it comes to investing. Again, using a modest 7% average return, if you invest money once and it returns an average of 7% return, that money will double in 10 years. At a 10% return, your money will double in 7 years. That's pretty cool, and it works. It absolutely does. To further illustrate it, here's another example. If you invest $100 a month for every month, that's $1,200 a year. After 10 years, after you investing $12,000, because you'll be doing $1,200 a year for 10 years, $100 a month, you'll have, at 7%, you'll have over $17,000. That's all right, that's pretty cool. After 20 years, after investing $24,000, you'll have $51,000. Oh, now you got my attention. After 30 years, after investing $36,000, $100 a month, you'll have $118,000. After 40 years, be really ready to be impressed. After investing $48,000, you'll have over $560,000. So time and compound interest, compound earnings are powerful. The lesson here is simple. Start as early as you can. Time is your friend, man. I'm telling you, that's why people are so rich. They've been doing it for so long, and it's insane how quickly your money grows when it's been doing it for year after year after year. Well, it's never too late to start. So then you're dealing with a 10-year window or a 5-year window. It doesn't matter. It still works. The numbers are just smaller. That's all. The concept is sound. There's nothing wrong with starting later if that's, where you are in your life. There's lots of different ways to invest your money. Some are safer, but they don't have the potential of a better return. Some are risky, but the potential for bigger returns is greater. Some examples of some of the safer ones are a savings account at a bank, a certificate of deposit, a government bond, so forth. Some of the more riskier ones are individual company stocks, commodities, if you really want to get crazy. You want to really get crazy, cryptocurrency is the latest craze. The returns on these things can be astronomical, or you can lose every freaking nickel you invested. So what's your risk tolerance? What's your comfort zone? And the other thing I tell everybody, don't try to play the market. Don't try to time the market. No one does it well, consistently. Because again, if they did, they wouldn't be giving you advice. They'd be on a yacht in the Mediterranean cruising. Because it's impossible to, effectively, consistently. You can hit it every once in a while, sure. But you know what? You don't hear about the times that you miss. And there's probably more than those than they'll ever admit. It's tough. It really is. But using a financial professional, what you got to remember, and I learned this years ago, I've been blessed. I've got two that I deal with that I trust that are absolutely critical to our financial position that we've been able to enjoy. They have access to information that you never will, that I never will. They have market insight that we never will have. Even if we had the time to spend 8 hours a day, learning all this stuff, they have avenues into people and reports and substantive stuff that we never will. If you find someone that you trust, that you like to work with, man, use them. Pick their brain and don't be afraid to ask questions. If you don't think they're giving you the time of day or you don't like the way they're treating you, jump ship, go to someone else. There's tons of reputable ones that are out there. You should feel that you are the most important client to the person you're dealing with, whether you're dealing with $5,000 or $5 million. Because it's damn important to you, and it better be damn important to the person that you're entrusting with giving you financial advice. So that's something.
Will money managers work with people who don't have IRAs?
Oh, absolutely. They all won't. You're not going to go to Edward Jones, but there are others that do. Absolutely. Absolutely. I know a couple, and when we're done, if you want, I can give you some names of people that I know of, that I've dealt with, still deal with, and if they don't personally any longer, I'm sure they can point me in the right direction to give some referrals to some other people. Absolutely. But you got to be comfortable. I'm lucky. The two I deal with, I've known personally before I started giving them our money to invest. That's an additional level of comfort that I have. Not everybody has that. And I hope neither of them retire anytime soon. That's for sure. So that's really kind of the gist of all that. Retirement savings. Two most common types, IRAs, 401k plans. 401k plans are offered through an employer or a chamber or an association. They're qualified plans. It is investing in different types of investment options, mutual funds typically, other types of investment, bonds, fixed money market stuff as well sometimes. The key component I want to talk about the 401k plans, a lot of companies provide what's called an employer match. So if you choose to contribute 6% of your paycheck, and let's say the plan for the company you work for will match half of what you contribute up to like 3%. If you contribute 6, they'll match 3. That's free money. If you can only afford to put in 4%, then they'll only match 2.
Still free money.
It's still free money, but if you can at least contribute to the amount that will have the company contribute to the maximum that they're going to do based on the plan that you're in. Because like you said, it is free money. It is really phenomenal. Oh, I said that? Man, was I wise when I said that? Holy mackerel. Another commonly used and very popular method of saving for retirement are individual IRA accounts. Same concept. You can go through mutual funds, you can do bonds, you can do any number of investment choices, just as widespread as are typically offered through 401k plans or individually, just going on your own and getting stuff. Same basic concept. It's retirement funds. We'll talk about that later on as far as the nuances of it. But those are the two most common. There are many others as well. These are just the two that probably most everyone is familiar with, and we've probably, at least at some level, probably participated to some extent in some of them in one way, shape, or another. The other distinction, which is critical, is the distinction between what's called traditional 401k and IRAs and what are called Roth IRAs. Different. Tax treatment wise, and it's significant in your life circumstance, dictates when one would be more appropriate maybe than the other. We'll talk about the traditional one first. 401k that invests, or an IRA that invests in a traditional retirement account allows you to deduct the total amount within statutory limits set by the IRS. It reduces your current taxable income. So if your current taxable income is $30,000 a year and you contribute $5,000 to a 401k plan with your money, then your taxable income is reduced by that $5,000. So you get the immediate tax benefit of your contribution. In addition, as that money sits over time, you are not taxed for the earnings that it makes. So it grows and grows and grows and grows with no tax burden on it. However, and there's always a however when you deal with the IRS, you can't touch it until you're 59 and a half or older without penalty. And the penalty is huge. And by design, this is set up for retirement needs, and they don't want that money pulled out sooner because that wasn't the intent of how this thing was set up to begin with. Now, you're not forced to take money out at 59 and a half. You don't have to take a nickel out of that until you reach age 72. At 72, it's called a required minimum distribution based on some convoluted calculation based on your age. You need to take out a certain percentage of your retirement asset portfolios because they don't want rich people to hoard this money for generations and never be taxed because they're losing a lot of tax income. When you're talking about very wealthy people with 7- and 8-figure retirement portfolios, the tax on that, you can only imagine, is huge. They don't want that stuff sitting out there ad infinitum. They want to, at some point, to be able to collect tax on it. So, at 72, they make you take out a certain amount, and that percentage changes every year, declines as you get older, but that's set in place only when you get to reach age 72. Roth IRAs, on the other hand, you can contribute to them, still subject to the same limitations of how much you can contribute, but you don't get the current tax deduction for your contribution. So if you've got money to set aside for retirement and you don't need to lower your current year taxable income, maybe a Roth IRA is something you may want to consider. You don't get the tax benefit, but you also are never taxed for the earnings for a Roth investment. And when it's done and you take money out, you're taking money out and that's tax-free. You didn't receive the tax benefit at the front end when you made the contribution. You don't pay the tax on it when you take it out at the end. I'm sorry?
But you paid tax on it when you earned it.
No. All the earnings in a Roth IRA are not taxable.
You're paying the tax.
Well, you're paying the tax because it's not reducing your current income. Yeah, right, of course. Yeah, that's right. That's a very good point. So it's not for everybody, but the benefit of it is when you need it later in life, and the whole concept of deferring taxes till when you're retired, theoretically, you're going to be in lower tax brackets when you retire from when you're working years. You know, you're not going to be making as much, so the tax rates are lower, so you benefit by taking money out of a traditional IRA or a 401k at lower tax rates. The Roth, there is no tax impact when you take it out, but you never receive the benefit at the front end either. So just keep that in mind. It's not for everybody. It is truly something that, when a Roth is relevant, I believe, like in my personal case, I'll give you our example. I retired 3.5 years ago, or so I thought I was retiring, and never planned to come here and work here for an income. I thought I would be living off my retirement and, making do with that level of income. Well, wait a minute, my situation's now changed. I don't want to take out IRA distributions to supplement my income out of my traditional accounts because it's going to add to my tax burden. I haven't, well, a little bit I have, but I haven't lowered our tax position appreciably because I'm still earning income from wages. My wife still works. Thank you for working, by the way. And it is a different situation that I would have projected. So earlier this past year, we had to put a brand new fence in our backyard. My wife has reached 59 and a half, even though she doesn't look anywhere near that. And I certainly have. And we took money out of the Roth because there would be no tax impact on that withdrawal.
What about on the expenditure?
Well, we had to get a new fence because we had deers eating the crap out of our flowers and gardens in our backyard. I live on Grand Island, so that enough said about that. So it's a different life circumstance that would make one type of investment withdrawal more appropriate than another. That's all. That's the point I'm trying to make. There's lots of non-retirement savings things you do, savings accounts, even stocks and bonds and such for non-retirement purposes that you take when you need them as you go through your working life. A lot of those, like bank accounts and interest-bearing financial instruments, are taxed each year. So you set up a bank account, they send you a statement at the end of the year, a 1099 form that says you earned $227 in interest. That gets added to your current income tax, your taxable income that year. You have stocks and bonds. You hold them for periods of time, and it depends how long you hold them. There's different rules, long-term versus short-term. I'm not going to get into the nuances of that. But they're taxed when you sell the stocks and the bonds because it's now a transaction that is a tax transaction.
And anything you leave behind when you die is taxable.
Within certain limitations, and we'll talk about that right at the end. There is ways to mitigate much of that.
But I need to know how. Jonathan keeps telling me he's going to die tomorrow.
Okay, well, that's between you and he. So it all comes down to risk tolerance and discipline. If you can deal with the risk, invest more aggressively. It's in the long term, as I said, it likely will pay off for you. If you can't, that's okay. You need to be able to sleep at night, folks. You don't want to be stressed out over this stuff if you can't be comfortable with it, right? So be less aggressive. There is no one way to do it, whatever works for you. The stock market goes up and down. I'm going to talk very briefly about three important things. The stock market goes up and down, but you only experience a real tangible loss if you sell a stock when it's down. If you hold a stock and it all of a sudden drops 10% in value and you hold on to it, you haven't experienced a loss yet. It's on paper, but you really haven't experienced a loss yet. If you panic, like a lot of people do, and sell it, then you have experienced a loss. So if you can, if you've got the stomach for it, or the timing in your life allows you to, hold on to it. If it comes back, you never experienced a loss. So don't panic. And again, this is just a general life lesson. Don't make decisions based on panic because they seldom are the best decisions. So just food for thought. Hold on to it if you can afford to hold on to it. If you don't need the cash for something else that's more important at the time, ride it out if you can. Now, again, if it's a stock of a company that's all of a sudden going belly up or embroiled in some major lawsuit, that's different. Sell, run, cut your losses and move on. But if it's just normal market volatility, if you can ride it out, ride it out. It ain't a loss until you sell it. A real loss, that is. Here's something that few people can appreciate and understand. When's the best time to buy stuff? When it's on sale? Does that make sense? Right? We all bargain shop because we have to. That's just the reality of it, right? But, you know, when people are most unlikely to want to buy additional stocks? When they've lost value, because they're afraid. But think about it. You have $100 to spend, and the stock you're looking to buy before it dropped was $10 a share, and now it's $7 a share. You can buy more shares of stock. You just bought something on sale. Makes sense to me. It's counterintuitive because you're fearful of buying something when it's losing value. Again, assuming it's going to come back up again, and oftentimes it does, you just bought more units or more shares of that stock for the same price. So just kind of keep that concept in mind. It is really no different than bargain shopping at Walmart or wherever. Oh, excuse me. Oh boy, getting old really is all that it's cracked up to be. Okay, the other point, always, and I mentioned this to you, Lorraine, always seek professional advice. It's complicated, time consuming. It is just difficult. Get someone you trust, find someone you're comfortable with, bombard them with questions if you don't understand stuff. Be part of the process. You're counting on their expertise and advice, clearly, but don't be a spectator. Involve yourself in it. Learn it to the extent that you're capable of learning it, and you will be more comfortable. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. I always stress to people, diversify. You don't want to count on just one thing to hit a home run, because before you hit a home run, you're going to strike out 20 times or 10 times or whatever. So keep that in mind. They have access to information, like I said, that you never, ever will be able to have access to. We're winding down. I'll get through this quickly. Taxes. Huge difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion. Very rich people pay lawyers and accountants tons of money to help them with tax avoidance, while tax evasion is what ultimately took down Al Capone. Just to put it in some context that might be relevant to everybody to understand. You've heard the old saying, there are two things in life you can count on, death and taxes. Well, I'm not so sure there's only two, but I'm certain that those two are on the list. That is the absolute God's honest truth. So as we just discussed during the investing section, there are numerous life events that you need to always factor tax consequences into as well. Buying or selling a home, taking out a loan, refinancing your mortgage, saving for college, starting a business out of your home, withdrawing money from an IRA before age 59 and a half, buying an energy efficient furnace. All of those things have tax consequences. So just keep those in mind. It is clearly something that needs to be factored into your decision-making process. So the long and the short of this section is consult a professional or use tax software. I've been using TurboTax for 15 years. I swear by it. I'm comfortable with it. It's my world, but I could never do it without the software. They're up to speed on the rules, the regulations, all the latest credits and deductions that change every year. I mean, I downloaded TurboTax for 2022 3 weeks ago, and I've gotten 3 updates within 3 weeks. It just always changes. Keep on top of it. Use a professional or software if you're comfortable using it, and don't be afraid to seek professional advice, because it is not easy to manage. It is really complicated. Okay, personal insurance. I talk about this very briefly. It's often overlooked. It's a key component of sound financial management. Short-term disability insurance, long-term disability insurance, and life insurance. Short-term disability insurance, most employers, well, New York State, they have to provide a minimum amount of that coverage. It basically covers you if you're off work for a short period of time, starting from day 8 to day 180, up to 6 months. And it is something that helps maybe a woman during a pregnancy. After giving childbirth, you want to spend some time away from work. You can get some short-term disability insurance to supplement the time you're away, or short-term illnesses or injuries. And it's an important part. And you can supplement it yourself. The amount that the employers are mandated by New York State to provide is a de minimis small benefit. You can supplement that by buying some additional short-term disability insurance on your own. Long-term disability insurance is the key one to think about. That benefit starts at day 181, after 6 months and 1 day, and can extend out as far as to normal retirement age if you want to pay higher premiums for that extended period of time. It's not cheap insurance, I'm not going to kid you guys, but I'm telling you what, it's income protection. If you are faced with a serious injury or a serious illness that doesn't allow you to work for a long period of time, this may save your home. It may save your marriage, for Christ's sakes. It is so important to at least explore. Again, it's not cheap, but it does provide that protection and that income at a time when you are unable to produce it yourself. And most everybody I know has some sort of life insurance. So few people have long-term disability insurance, and the likelihood, unfortunately, of people in this room becoming long-term disabled are astronomically higher than of you passing away during your working years. So think about it, food for thought. But again, I'm going to stress, it ain't cheap. So is it for you? Maybe. I would at least ask the question, talk to an insurance professional, get some quotes, see how long the term is. Maybe you just want it for 5 years or 10 years, or if you can afford it, maybe you do want it all the way out to normal retirement age. I've had that insurance, well, I don't know any longer because I thought I was retiring. Had it for 27 years, paid tons of money into it, never used the benefit. I still think it was money well spent. It let me sleep well at night and protected my wife and I, God forbid, if something had happened. That's a choice you make. You know, it was important to me and us. It may not be to you, and that's okay too. Life insurance, no real reason to talk about that. We know what that is. The thing I want to distinguish between, a lot of employers provide term insurance while you're employed. It's usually a small amount, but the thing to remember is when you leave that company's employment, unless you have an option to convert it to your own personal policy, that insurance stops. So don't think if you change jobs that you now are going to have that life insurance you once had while you were working for that company.
What if you purchase term insurance and don't realize it? I mean, I have life insurance.
Well, how do you purchase something that you don't realize?
Did it. She said that she purchased it and paid the premiums and everything, and then one day it was just all cut off.
Well, it's only as good as the strength of the company you buy it from. So you buy it from the big players, the John Hancocks, the Metropolitans, the AIGs that are strong and solid and have been proven for 40, 50, 60, 100 years. You know, if you buy it from the Joe Blow insurance company at a discounted price, then you maybe run that risk. But again, it goes back to what I said earlier, Lorraine. If you stay involved, those companies send you statements all the time. They correspond with you. They have to by law. So you should know if a policy is still in force, and all of a sudden when you stop getting statements and you don't get it and you go, wow, I better look into this. So it's all about being involved in the process. It shouldn't come as a surprise. It really, really shouldn't.
But term policies all just for a certain amount of time?
Yes, but they can be for different terms. 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, depending on your age. And you have to qualify, not term policies, but whole policies you can. And there's combo policies that are I'm not going to get into all that can also have a cash out option as well. Others have options that can convert part of your insurance coverage to long-term care insurance, but that's really complicated stuff. Legal documents, just going to name what they are. Powers of attorney, healthcare proxies, living wills, and a last will and testament. So many of these things are ignored until it's too late. The time to put these in place is before you need them. When you're not forced under stressful circumstances to make quick decisions on who do I want to be my power of attorney, or what do I want my last will and testament. Who do I want to leave what to? Think about it when you're not under those stressful conditions, because you'll make better decisions and you'll have time to think it through, execute them. Then if you do them ahead of time and your life situation changes, your principal beneficiary is your husband. But then 5 years after you create it, you're divorced, you remember to go back and change it. Change it to me. I'll be happy to be your beneficiary. I'll be more than happy to step right up. I'm that kind of guy. So it's again, it still goes back to the same basic thought. Be involved. Don't do it and forget it. No, nothing in life is like that. So be involved with it. And again, professional attorneys specialize in this stuff. They're excellent at providing you advice and what's right for your situation. And if it doesn't make sense to you, freaking ask questions. Don't accept something that you don't understand. No question is a dumb question. If you don't understand something, ask it. Catherine will absolutely attest. I ask 50,000 questions a day. I don't understand a lot. I'm not the sharpest, stick in the, or arrow in the quiver, or whatever the heck that analogy is.
Tool in the box.
Thank you. But you don't learn until you ask. It's okay to ask questions. So be involved and ask questions if you don't understand. Lastly, financial legacy and end-of-life choices. There are so many ways to shield and protect your money as you get to the point in your life where you need long-term care or something along those lines. You need to do things ahead of time. There's certain windows of opportunity you have to work within. And again, there are attorneys locally, because I had one that I've worked with for many years, who specialize in what's called elder law. And they can navigate through all of that stuff with you. Legal ways to shelter your money from the freaking government and from the freaking nursing homes, because it is expensive as hell.
You must know
You have to do it a period of time.
Yes, there are always time constraints, and you're not going to be able to shield all of your money, but a good portion of it you can legally. It's just getting the proper advice in enough time to set up what you need to set up. And even before that, if you can get so sophisticated and talk to one of these people, set up trusts to begin transferring assets to your loved ones during your life. So when you reach that point, you don't have the asset in your name any longer. It better be a trusted person you're giving it to. Right, honey? Thank you. So that's something that you need to also consider if that's something you want to think about. If it ain't yours, the IRS can't get their grubby mitts on it, or the nursing home can't get their grubby mitts on it. It's certain things to consider. It's not right for everybody. It's complicated. It's sophisticated stuff. You need to have a seasoned professional to navigate through that, because unfortunately, what some shysters will do, they'll steer you toward things that are borderline not appropriate, and they'll wash their hands of the responsibility, and you'll be stuck with the legal mess. Find reputable people, proven methods, do your research, and it works. It truly works. So that's the last section. So in conclusion, again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. 2 takeaways I hope I was able to impart upon you all. Manage your money. Don't let it manage you. And again, if someone comes across to you as a know-it-all and says it's my way or the highway, don't listen to anybody else, run away as fast as you can, because they're full of crap. Basically that's the end, folks. Thank you very much.
Very nice. You were good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I want to know is,
And I have written out the entire presentation. If anybody wants them, please feel free to take them. And also, if you or anybody else wants to meet with me individually to talk about a particular circumstance, I'll be more than, except for you two, because I talk to you two all the time, I'll be happy to do so. No charge. I'm not going to solicit you to buy anything. But if you want to talk about specifics in your own personal situation privately, let me know. I'd be more than happy to make myself available if I can.
Well, because you've had a lot of different
parts of the lifespan.
Absolutely.
It could be anywhere, right?
I've earned these wrinkles.
I